Sorry to mention it. Just kidding. No, I know. You saw the poster for Tank Abbott versus whoever, and you just were like, I gotta do that.
Yeah, it was Tank Abbott.
And it was a fight with Conor. We all heard that. All right, first, how has Boston been treating you? You've been here a couple days.
I've never felt cold like this, and I lived in Iceland for a while. I don't know whether it's the air is damp here or something like that, but last night wasn't as bad, but the first night I went walking and my actually knees started getting sore, so I had to go in somewhere warm. Thankfully there was a bar nearby.
I actually got a text from a bouncer buddy of mine that I think you guys were at the parish last night. And he said, he was like, I just got the text. He's like, I just carded Conor McGregor like an asshole.
No, definitely not. Conor wasn't out last night.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I know that. Me and Chris went to Phoenix Landing for substance after training. But Conor, we didn't finish training last night till almost 11. And then he was straight back to his room because he had massage booked. And then he was asleep, so...
Oh, good.
Maybe it was a lookalike. There's a few of them going around.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of bearded Irishmen trying to pass this week. So Conor's here. He got here early.
Yeah, he's next door.
Oh, nice. What's different trainers take different approaches to this, but like when you're a week out from the fight like this, what is training like?
Usually what we try and do is get on wherever we are as time as quickly as possible. So, you know, obviously we're a couple of hours difference between here and Ireland. It's not huge. It's certainly not as drastic as Vegas, but we get in Thursday night. Thursday night we didn't do anything, but then Friday night, which is last night, correct?
Yes.
A bit all over the place. So we did a session last night around fight time. So he's fighting at around about 10 p.m. So that's when we did the session last night. So we'll do a session every night at 10 p.m. and it mimics the fight, but obviously at less intensity.
Is it a lesser intensity than what you would even do back home, and if it was 2 months away?
Oh yeah. It's no pads, no real contact, but still getting in rounds and decent pace in the grappling. But it's more about being sharp at the local time that we're going to be fighting at. You see some fighters go up and go running at 6 in the morning. I don't really get that because all MMA fighters are fighting usually between 7 and 10 p.m. So we try to peak between 7 and 10 p.m.
So that's a real, like, you consider that a very legitimate, like, it matters what time of day you're used to fighting.
Well, if you're training early in the morning and you're always like sleepy and your eyes are starting to close at like 9, 10 p.m. and you want to be a professional fighter, you might have to rethink that.
Do you find that some fighters have a much easier time adjusting to that sort of time difference thing than others, or is it kind of like pretty universal?
In my experience so far, it's been fairly universal. Most fighters that I deal with, they enjoy their lie-ins, so they're kind of on that natural get up late but stay up late clock anyway. I do have some that are early risers, but yeah, just certainly fight week anyway. I want them to be getting used to peaking physically and mentally, maybe more importantly mentally, at fight time in wherever location we are.
So will you do that kind of thing every night leading up to it, or it's just...
Yeah, pretty much every night, yeah.
Even the night before?
Maybe the night before, no, because we'll have made weight that day. So it's still recovering from making weight. That's by far the toughest part.
Yeah, be drained out. Yeah. And mentally, I imagine that's the toughest part as well.
Yeah, well, at 4, well, I guess the first fight will be on the scales at 4 p.m. on Saturday. It's a Sunday fight. So by 4:30, I guess, latest, they'll all be done, and that's pretty much when I consider my job done, because I'll have done my best as I can, preparing them in the lead up to it. I'll get the 3 of them on weight, and then I can sit back and watch the fights.
It's interesting that you say that, because it seems like there's a lot of coaches or maybe fighters that get a whole lot out of cornering in the moment. And I don't know if it's fighter by fighter, you think, or what your take is, but it seems like you're more of a prepare the meal and then it just gets served and you watch kind of thing. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's something I say to my fighters, that we're both going out to watch the hooligan fight. You know, me and Paddy, we're getting ringside seats to watch the hooligan fight. It's almost like a separate entity. I don't believe... I've actually, even at the UFC level, I've seen guys in the warm-up area being taught new techniques. That's absolutely insane to me. The job is done. If you're learning an armbar escape walking out to the cage, there is a problem. So I'm supremely confident by the time I'm walking them out that I've done as much as I can. The dice will be thrown and the result will be what it is, but I don't believe there's anything I can do beyond what I've done, and I can be comfortable that night with the result, whether it's a win or a loss, that we did everything that we possibly could.
Are there any exceptions to that, where you'll be in a situation where you see you have a fighter in a position, or you think of something and you're right there face against the cage, and that you'll yell it like...
On the amateur scene, that's more common. They're still learning the technique. So at the amateur scene, yeah, definitely a good cornerman can make a huge difference, because someone who's hasn't got all the skills yet, or is not used to using all the skills they've used in a training environment, in a competitive environment. So saying the right thing at the right time can be huge. But at the UFC level, the guys there's not a whole lot more. The guys know more than me at this stage that are competing at the UFC level. And also, I'm loud, but I can't compete with 18,000 crazy Bostonians.
That's a good point, yeah. I was in the crowd for the 2013 fight against Max Holloway, and he got the lights down, which no fighter that isn't in the main event gets. And it's almost like nobody noticed, because it was like, of course, yeah. Like, everyone went nuts. It was insane. And especially considering it was a 3-round decision, with the last 2 rounds mostly being kind of grappling domination, which is something hardcore fans like myself will love, but like maybe the beer swilling fans maybe not so much. But on that night, they were going freaking nuts for that.
Yeah, that was only that UFC Dublin was so special. I would have had that as my best experience so far, but it's a very close second.
And it's amazing also to learn the next, nobody knew, maybe you knew, but that the ACL had been blown at the end of the first or beginning of the second, I think it was.
It was near the end of the second.
Near the end of the second?
It was about a minute and a half to go in the second round, and it went in that awkward half-guard situation. But he didn't tell me in between rounds 2 and 3. He kept it to himself. We had words about that, but... yeah, if you watch the fight back, it finishes in our corner with Conor on top and the guard, and just when the referee stops them, he postures up on his knees and he turns to me. You can see it in the replay pretty clear, and he says, "My knee's blown." And I didn't quite understand him. I went in and he said, "My knee is gone." I said, "Is it sore?" And he said, "No, but it's unstable." And Joe Rogan was actually standing beside us. And then he got brought into the centre to have his hand raised, and Joe Rogan said to me, "It's actually worse that he's unstable than pain." And I was, "Well, what do you mean?" And he said, "Well, that's probably ACL gone." Mm-hmm. That's how they describe it. And I hoped he was wrong, but he was spot on.
Well, it's interesting to discuss. I mean, it's almost like it didn't happen now. The way Conor came back from it is like the way a seasoned pro would handle it and come back from it. Like GSP went through his trouble with the same injury, came back and didn't just look like okay. He like stomped a really high-level, well-rounded guy in Carlos Condit. Kind of a similar situation with Conor, where he comes back after what is, outside of the spine or the brain, kind of the most devastating injury an athlete can get, the ACL, and is peak Conor, like in his very first return. It's just kind of amazing.
Yeah, it wasn't a big surprise to us. I saw what he was doing daily in the gym. And we know it's a combination of factors. We're very lucky to live in times where medicine is incredibly advanced. Even maybe a decade ago, it wouldn't have been possible to do what he did. But and also we're very, 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 very lucky at how well the UFC treated him. Covering all expenses and making sure he had the best therapy and surgeon and so on. And then of course you've Conor's mind on top of that, which is maybe the most important of everything. And we all saw what was going on in the year out of competition and between the surgery and the rehab. So when he did walk back in to fight Brando, that was the first fight back, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. He's had Brando
and then Poirier. Yeah, so it was because we'd obviously seen him sparring full force in the gym, and back better than ever.
Yeah, it's a good sign when you're walking in and out of your rehab clinic and passing by Arnold Schwarzenegger. You're in a good place.
Yeah. I doubt he goes to the second-rate places. Apparently he was only going there to visit his girlfriend. That's what Conor says. I don't know.
But it's a bit kismet because, the kind of simpatico with the mindsets, I'd say. There's a lot of similarity there. As far as like I'm going to do something no one says I can do, and then bam, he goes and does it.
Yeah, there's a few humans on the planet that have been able to do that, and I wouldn't have mind being in the room to see that first meeting. I'm sure it was pretty funny.
I bet your phone blew up that day. Speaking of just being here in Boston, are you guys working? Any of the three SBG fighters or yourself are interacting or working with any local coaches or fighters or anything?
Yep. Tom Egan, my original UFC fighter. Yeah. He's here now a couple of years, and he's his coach and / boss Peter Welsh has very kindly let us use his gym. So we were there last night.
Local boxing legend Peter Welch.
Yeah, really, really top guy. We were here last when we were here in August previous year as well. So yeah, we'll be in that gym basically every night, and Tom is a great. Him and Tom Egan were moving around last night. He's a perfect partner because
for Conor.
Yeah, it was actually Tom Egan that brought Conor to me.
No kidding.
Almost 10 years ago. Tom was my student first, and he told Conor about it, and then brought Conor in, and then then last night I'm watching, like 10 years later, the two of them are helping each other out, still exchanging techniques, and they have a great little relationship. They just work together. They get on off the mat and they get on well on the mat. When I visit somewhere new, if you're going into a new gym a week out from a fight, and the local fighter says, "Oh, can I move around with Conor?" I'd say no right away, because you have to build up that level of trust. Whereas him and Conor could go at quite a decent pace. It was a pretty tough session last night, but smiling and laughing and understanding what Tom knows what the point of that session is. It's not a fight. It's a loosening up, and it's just like I said at the beginning. It's about getting mentally sharp at competition time.
Primer.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to take a sharp left turn here for a second into the philosophical, if you don't mind.
I'm glad I have my coffee.
I got my...
I see there, yeah. Frappuccino.
God bless caffeine.
Very West Coast.
Yeah, it's basically like a dessert disguising itself.
I just drink black coffee, but...
Yeah. I did that growing up, so now I'm like, okay.
Okay.
Spoil myself a little. Okay, I feel that MMA is high-level martial art on display, but that as much as I enjoy MMA, martial art itself is a much higher thing. So if prize fighting is the flash and sizzle of a steak, then steady training and techniques are the water, the underrated but most essential thing you need. Also, it seems to me that defending people in the street is the best use of martial art, with all the great competition that we all love coming second. Do you agree, first of all, and can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, all right. Big topic. For me, I think it's pretty simple. The most important part of martial arts is that you get as comfortable as you can be losing in front of your friends. That, I think, is the most important thing. It trashes your ego. you walk into a gym, especially for a young man. Every man wants to believe they can fight. And then they walk into a gym on day one, and if you're in a jiu-jitsu environment, you could be a big strong guy, and you walk in and there's a skinny blue belt tearing you a new one, making you feel silly. Your first day walking into a boxing gym, maybe you think you can throw a punch, and again, someone a lot smaller than you can using technique can outbox you. So I believe that's the most important aspect of martial arts, and it's why it's very important that there's a sporting aspect to whatever martial art you're doing. If you're doing a martial art that doesn't have a sporting aspect, and you're never being tested, and more importantly, you're never losing, then I don't believe you're ever going to grow as a human. Whereas if you can handle your ego being tapped out in front of your girlfriend, or losing a fight in front of your girlfriend, or in front of your peers, in front of your friends, and still be okay with yourself and still be comfortable in yourself, I think that's the greatest reward, or the greatest growth that you can get through martial arts. And that's why I think it's such an important sport, and I think it's actually what makes it a little bit more than just a sport. Whereas other sports, you lose a game of I'm trying to think of a game that's here, ice hockey. You're on
lots of Bruins fans.
you're on a losing hockey team. It can be sore to your ego, but not quite the same as losing a fight. Although I suppose in ice hockey there's quite a lot of fights.
I was going to say, maybe not a good example. You can get knocked the fuck out in ice hockey. But yes, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Basketball. I guess all these team sports, then maybe you can just blame your other teammates.
Tennis,
yeah. But I still think it's different than. I know it's different than fighting. I think that's why fighting was the original sport, and I think it's very important. And I teach a kids class back home, and I always we have little competitions all the time. And I think it's very important that kids. I don't believe in this medal for everybody bullshit. You lose, but you learn that losing is okay. Losing is a necessary step towards success in martial arts, or in business, or in anything. And I think we have to be careful not to raise a generation of people that are being shielded from loss and being, we say, mollycoddled, being wrapped in bubble wrap so as to never feel loss. Oh, you get a medal for participating. No, you lost today, but that's okay. There's no harm in losing. I saw a poster, I think it was on Hicks and Gracie's thing, it was something like, I've lost more times than the novices even tried. And so this is a big thing I'm trying to push in my gym anyway, that to embrace being a loser, because I don't believe you can become a winner and become successful without losing. We want to use Conor as a high level example. He had his last loss against Joe Duffy, and it was a quick loss, and he was on a bit of a run then, and all his family was there and everything, and you can go two ways off that. You can, Joe Duffy had a loss shortly after that and quit MMA, whereas Conor, he had that loss, and what did he do? He threw himself into grappling for almost a year and came back and tried again, got back up on the horse, whatever metaphor you want to use, and now look where he is today. And I've got so many examples, I'm sure you have as well yourself, of friends that maybe try to start a business and you failed many times, but you keep trying, and you're okay with losing, and you realize that stumbling is a necessary step towards being able to run. Now, secondary things off it, that it can keep you in shape. You can defend yourself and your family, or you can defend someone on the street, or all of these. I believe they're a distant second place to the primary goal of what combat sports does for young men.
That is deep. I like it.
It's something I've been sort of mulling over lately, but I've never actually spoken about it, so it's the first time I've kind of brought it up.
What do you think? Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting turn, because I've spent years thinking that you have martial art as just, okay, if you want to just go all the way down here, it's like we all experience time as this linear thing, but a lot of scientists think that time, including Einstein, thought that time didn't really exist. Everything's just kind of happening at once. Individually, we experience them as moments. So, getting to the point, if say you're on a train and you see someone just being brutally attacked The things you've done up to that moment determine how that moment's going to play out. If it's a train full of cowards, the person's just going to go on and victimize the person. But if there's even one person there who can handle himself, that can save a life. You know, that's an extreme example, but those kind of examples play out all the time. Maybe not always to that high stakes, but a lot of times to that high stakes. And my point being, you know, that's someone's mother or sister or brother or a loved one. That has such an effect on so many people. And so martial art can be, to me, I've always thought that that's the highest use of it, is just in little everyday situations like that you'll likely never hear about. You'll have the occasional news story, but the vast majority will go unseen. But listening to you, it's given me something to ponder, because, I mean, yeah, you're getting down to the soul, I guess, perfecting.
Well, I may have the opportunity, or a trained martial artist may have the opportunity to help someone, but I can guarantee you, every single one of them will have to help themselves. We all will have to go through the process of dealing with loss, whether it's in the very unimportant sporting arena or in the slightly more important business arena, but certainly in the most important personal arena. You will have to deal with loss, and I believe martial arts is a fantastic vehicle for young men to become familiar with loss and coming back from it and dealing with it. Now, the idea you're out with your girlfriend and the three guys jump on you and you bust them up and she faints into your arms and you go off into the sunset. That might happen. You may have an opportunity to do that. You may have an opportunity to help someone on a train or any of these different scenarios. But I guarantee you won't be able to do that. You won't be able to help them if you haven't, first of all, mastered yourself and being able to help yourself. And I do think a key to happiness is if everybody takes care of their own happiness. That's a big key to happiness, rather than trying to help other people with their happiness. So if you've helped yourself get to a certain level where you've mastered yourself, and as a side benefit that has taught you how to fight, then if you see a weaker person being bullied or whatever, that you're able to step up and help them. That's a great use of the physical side of martial arts. But I do think if you want to say the spiritual, I'm an atheist, but I'm still comfortable using that word. Or as like I've been saying, this idea of smashing your own ego. I think that is the greatest use of martial arts.
Yeah, you've given me a lot to think about, because when you frame it in that way, you make a point that outside the dramatic, but still very real self-defense or defense of others situation, martial arts does carve the soul into make you more of who you are, which is going to affect all of your life, not just fighting and everything, and affect those other people on the train too. So
yeah, it's nice to be around happy, comfortable people. And that's my experience of being around high-level martial artists. They tend to be quite comfortable in themselves. They don't need to put on a show for anybody. They don't need to crush your hand when you shake their hand. I guess so many people do that to me. Yeah, it's just nice being around calm, relaxed people like that have left everything in the gym and are just comfortable in their own shoes.
Which is worse, as a quick sidebar, the guy who crushes your hand to show you like that he's tough too, don't worry, or the person who you go to shake their hand and it's just like a dead washcloth?
The one with the sweaty hand.
Oh, the third.
The sweaty hand.
A third hand appeared. Okay, so sort of getting back toward the training thing. Some people train for competition. Some train just for self-defense. Some train just to get in shape. Some just to blow off steam. Maybe some don't even know why they're there and find their way. Can you talk a little about the differences in training those different kinds? How it differs for you from a coach's perspective of those different categories?
I genuinely believe everybody is training for the same reason, and there is only one reason, and that is because it makes them happy. They enjoy it. The side benefits of maybe it gets you in shape. Maybe you can defend yourself. Maybe you can headline a UFC card, maybe you fight in a local show, maybe you never fight in your life, whatever. I believe all of those are side benefits from the primary reason. And the primary reason is they enjoy martial arts. Martial arts is cool. And like, I know people who are professional dancers or artists or whatever, and they all do their activity for the same reason, that they just enjoy it. So but if you keep that, if you understand that's the real reason that motivates people, that's their incentive, then the environment is, for me anyway, quite easy to create, because it's just varying levels of intensity, but it's the same core. So I might have a 50-plus-year-old in wanting to learn jiu-jitsu. So obviously the intensity for that person is going to be different than the intensity for a professional fighter. But they can train in under the same roof. We have basically 4 levels in the gym of intensity: foundation, primate, combat athlete, and ultimate athlete. And they're all training martial arts, but the level of resistance is different, and certainly the level of contact is different. But like I said, I understand the kernel is the same. Martial arts is cool. They want to learn some techniques, and kind of find that moment of zen, if you want to say, when you're rolling, or you're in a nice pad session, or you're boxing, or you're wrestling, or whatever, where you've suddenly stopped regretting your past and stopped worrying about your future. There's only that moment, and however you can find that through martial arts, that's what we try to create in the gym.
Oh, that's very interesting. So it's not a matter for you as a coach of kind of worrying about these different pots that you have to water differently or anything. It's just kind of a open source.
I've been doing it so long. I know the person might come in and say, I want to learn to defend myself, but I know what the real question is, or what the real desire is. I want to be confident, and I want to do something I enjoy. And that's the same for a 20-year-old coming in that wants to fight, or a 50-year-old coming in that wants to get in shape. I know what their real incentive is, what their real desire is. So they fit right into the environment that we already have created. Yeah.
So in that sense, the guy headlining the UFC card next week, Conor, and the 50-year-old white belt who's just learning how to roll a little bit, they kind of have the same stem inside them.
I believe so, and only because in my gym there's such a wide variance of age, of ability, of body types, of surgeons training with bouncers. We're such a wide group, but they can all get on the mat. They all have this, like I said, love of martial arts that keeps them unified. That I can see Conor working with that 50-year-old dude on his first day and showing him how to pass the guard, and then there's a great learning environment in the gym, but it's only because we're all interested in the same thing. I don't believe in willpower, and I don't believe in motivation. I've never motivated anybody in my life. I couldn't motivate Conor to learn the guitar, no matter what cool phrases I had. I couldn't. There's no internet meme I could show him that would make him go, all right, I'm going to do 8 hours a day in the guitar. That's you have to have that, or you don't. And everybody in my gym has that for martial arts. So all I'd have to do is allow it to happen.
So when someone has that motivation and you see it in them, you recognize it, one of your skills as a coach, do you have the situation where something breaks off for someone and you find yourself going back and helping them mend that? In that sense,
all I have to do is remind them of what brought them in here in the first place. Now, that can take different forms. That might take a form of somebody is maybe training very hard for weeks on end, and eventually the body starts giving, and then I take them out of that environment and put them instead in, okay, let's practice jump spinning kicks today. Just a mental break from what you were doing if you were just hitting one particular technique very hard for a long time. But I just remind them what it is about that brought them in the first place, that they just enjoy martial arts, and to lower the intensity, or to up the intensity, or to look at a different martial art. And I sometimes describe MMA as like spinning plates, that you've all these different skill sets that you need to be good at, and maybe you're at wrestling for a couple of months, but your boxing plate is almost stopped spinning, so you got to go over and spin the boxing plate. So yeah, that's all I believe I have to do, is just remind them what it is that brought them in the first place.
And then the love takes over from inside from there.
Yes.
Beautiful. Speaking of SBG, Straight Blast Gym in Ireland, I have to imagine. I mean, I know there was a bit of an explosion over there. How has the explosion been over 2014? Like, what was last year like for the gym?
Yeah, a bunch of factors came together. We're just celebrating our 1 year anniversary in our new location. I've spent the last 12 years training in small, dingy industrial units that were freezing cold and filthy and dirty, and then in last January we moved to 10,000 square foot of prime roadside, warm, dry, clean, all glass front building. It's beautiful. It's the only one of its type in Ireland, and I don't believe there's all that many of them in Europe. But it was a massive risk, but we had a couple of factors come together at the right time that made it a measured risk, and it's paid off. And now 12 months later I'm still able to pay the rent, which is great. I haven't been kicked out yet. Our membership has more than quadrupled in that period. It was great to bring in those like I said, these 4 levels, so we can. I was always known for training fighters over the last decade, but a lot of times people would say, well, I'll get in shape, then I'll join SBG, or I'll go somewhere else and learn the basics, then I'll join SBG. But now we're getting guys are more comfortable walking in day one, regardless of shape or age or goals, and they're finding a home because we have these different levels of programs. And and then I have a great team behind me. My coaches are unbelievable. They're fantastic, and we're all on the same page. These guys have been with, most of my coaches have been with me over 10 years. Certainly there's nobody coaching in my gym that hasn't been with me at least 5 years. So we're all of a similar mindset, and then like my sister, she's the overall manager, and how she's been able to take care of so much of me as well. And now my fiance is taking care of membership stuff. So everybody's kind of just doing what they're good at, and it's all kind of happened naturally over the last time, and it's all just starting to come together now, which is great. And we're getting good competition results as well. So it's been good.
A true old school kung fu movie family style, where everybody pitches in a little bit.
Yeah.
How spread out is SBG as far as how many gyms around the world? Is it just the one, like the main location?
Good question. Well, the headquarters, my coach, he's based in Portland, Oregon. I have my gym in Dublin. That's the headquarters in Ireland. And then I have what are called ATGs, affiliated training groups. I've 10 of them around Ireland, and these will be small clubs, maybe 20 members, 30 members, and the coach would have contacted me and said, listen, we're a group of guys, we love training, but we're not able to get belts in jiu-jitsu, or we're not sure how we should structure our sessions, so can you help out? So they affiliate to SBG Ireland, and I visit them once a year, and they come up to me once a year. That's the minimum requirements, but usually I have a lot more interaction with them, and I'm just kind of helping them try to not make quite as many mistakes as I did when I was learning the trade, and get them a little bit of structure to their training. And then obviously if they're training in the gi as well, I'm able to award them belts and BJJ. So it's a good little system, and it's kind of solidified over the last 2 years. And I've now got, like I said, 10 solid groups around the country. My friend runs SBG in the UK, and I know he's a few ATGs as well. And then there's one in Sweden, Estonia. I'm not going to remember where they all are. South Africa. I was in South Africa a couple of months ago teaching there. There's a bunch of them around the States, Canada. If anybody's interested, you can go to straightblastgym.com, and they'll see the full list around the world.
Very cool. So it's blowing up, not just in Ireland, but everywhere.
Yeah. It's growing. It's growing fast.
Going back to the beginning just a little bit, I know that you started out as, I wasn't going to say a fighter, but a professional fighter, or amateur. I'm not sure. I know you had some MMA fights yourself. What was it that first got you into it? Like, what brought you to compete yourself? And it just kind of...
close to the question I said was banned, isn't it?
Wait, what? There was no talking... Oh, that's right. No, fuck it.
I'm only kidding.
Fuck it. This never happened.
I'll forgive you. It's a different question. So. It's a different question.
I got a little lost.
What got me into MMA? So I'll forgive you. What got me into competing?
That was the question. For the record, it wasn't MMA.
No. For me personally, I wanted to experience it. I definitely was. I was always the coach. I was the first one to open the gym, and so I was given the classes.
Even before your first fight?
Well, there was no clubs in Ireland. I was the first one, so I wasn't when I was 19 I could go somewhere to train. I kind of jumped around, and I'd go into this boxing gym and do some boxing sparring. I'd go here and train judo, and I'd go here and try wrestling, but there was no one even knew what MMA was. I started fighting in England. I'd hear about a fight in the UK, and I'd just fly over.
What year are we talking about here?
Well, I did my first when I was 19. And I'm 38 now, so it's almost 20 years ago.
Wow.
It was 90. I want to say 98.
So this is in big, big MMA world talk. This is the 90s. This is the dirt floor, Josh Barnett fighting for $50 kind of era.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't paid anything.
Yeah.
I was just like I said, and this is also long before like YouTube or anything like this. So. I didn't even get a name of an opponent. If you got a weight class, that was a bonus. But in general, you'd hear of a fight was going on somewhere, and you'd fly over myself, and I'd arrive, and then hopefully you got a matchup, and then they say, "Oh, it's that guy over there," and you go, "Okay," and then you'd fight, and then that was that, So,
was there a sense of it that back then that the perspective was UFC was kind of like this thing that was at the top?
It was quite small. I mean, this was UFC 38 was. I went to see that in England.
Oh, you were there?
Yeah.
Was that Frank Mir, Ian Freeman?
Beat up Frank Mir, yeah. Great fight. A great night. It was a big step forward for European MMA as well, I believe, because, here was an English guy, mostly like, he was known as the brawler kind of style, against the submission specialist that was UFC level, and he beat him, and that was kind of like we all kind of went, oh, hold on a second, they don't have special moves over there. And I trained with Ian quite a bit in the lead up to that and after that as well. Oh. Learned a lot from Ian. But yeah, it was that time of just you'd hear of a fight and you just go along to it. And no one, like, as well, it was very different than now in that you were never thinking. I mean, the UFC wasn't even big then. It wasn't like if you fought in the UFC, you're a millionaire. You're getting a few thousand, and it was. Is it going to last? Is it going to just get banned everywhere? So it wasn't like that was the goal. The goal was to become, if you do this, you might get a lot of money fighting, or make a lot of money being involved in this activity, this sport. It was just that I'm doing it because I love it. We're kind of coming back to what we spoke about at the start.
Sure. I
just really enjoyed it. I'd done martial arts my whole life, and I didn't really feel comfortable doing martial arts until I found this, and then I was like, wait a minute, this is cool. I was always a smaller guy, and Heist Gracie was obviously a big influence and a big hero of mine, that I recently just got to talk to for the first time, which was very cool.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah.
All right, hold on, stop everything. What's that story?
I was in my office, and my fiance came in to me and said, "There's some guy called Heist Gracie or something on the phone," and I was like, "What do you mean, Heist Gracie is on the phone?" And she's holding the phone in her hand, and I went, "On what phone?" "You just rang the gym." What? He's on the phone. I was like, alright, who's taking the piss, So I took the phone off, and Heist Gracie's on the phone. And, hey, my friend, John. And I was, holy shit. And long story short, he was giving me a heads up that one of his students was going to be in town, and could he drop in? And
you said no, of course.
I said, listen, I'm busy. Stop calling me. So I said, yes, of course, he's more than welcome. And then I said, look, I can't let you get off the phone just yet. And I said, I just want to say, you're calling me here in my gym. I'm 20 years doing this now. I now make a living out of it. I've almost 500 students, and black belt in jiu-jitsu, and all of this is down to you. You inspired me, and I've changed my life, really. And he was incredibly humble, and he was like, it's nothing to do with me. We're all in the shadow of my father. And I just was blown away. It was a very big moment for me. And he just was, maybe in Europe I'll drop by and say hello. And I was like, damn right you will. So yeah, that was a very nice milestone to have Hoist Gracie ringing me. Could one of his students train with me?
That's amazing. So when you made the transition from fighter to coach, I always kind of asterisk in my head when I say that, because a coach is still a fighter. A person can be a fighter without even fighting in the ring. But from professional fighter to competitor to coach, was that something that was in your head the whole time, or did something happen that made you realize, okay, I'm not going to fight, and then you chose coaching? You follow into it, or was it always there?
Yeah, kind of the other way around, to be honest. I was always the coach, and then I did a few fights, but I was always the coach. I was always the one organising the classes. Like, we kind of went off on a tangent there, but I never had a coach. I never had anybody cornering me in fights or coaching me daily. Now, when I fought in South Africa, I was on the same card as another SBG fighter, Forrest Griffin, and Rory Singer, and I got to meet their coach, Matt Thornton, and then then he became my coach, and it was great. But he was in Portland, Oregon. I was in Dublin, Ireland, so I didn't have that daily contact, of being prepared for fights. It was great when I got to meet him and stuff like that. But the point I'm making is, I was always the coach. I was always the one running the classes. So fighting to me was fun, and I wanted to compete. And for me personally, I wanted to experience something I was going to pass on. So I would speak from a position of experience. Now, there's much better coaches than me out there that have never fought. I don't believe like the likes of Greg Jackson has fought MMA. I could be wrong. I don't think he has.
Not to my knowledge. Yeah, I think you're correct.
And look how good he is. I think I had 12 professional fights and a couple of amateur fights. So, but that was just for me. I wanted to experience it. I don't think everybody has to do that, but that's how I did it. And I've competed in boxing and jiu-jitsu and a lot of different martial arts, because it was an experience for me to do it. But all the time I saw myself as the teacher, as the coach. For sure I was. Actually, my last fight was a fun one to do, because it was my first very high level fighter. His name was Adrian Dogorski, and he made his pro debut on the undercard of my final fight, which was the headline fight. He fought earlier on, and I cornered him, and he had a great win, and that was the beginning of his pro career. And then I headlined the show, and I fought a good English guy, Robbie Olivier, who's actually still fighting, it was I won that fight, and it was kind of a cool experience for me as a coach to have one of my students on the same card.
Literally transitioning in that night.
That was definitely the passing of the torch, if you want to say, and that was my swan song, so to speak. I'd had a big fight before that, which was going to be my last fight, but I lost, and I was still dealing with my ego at that stage, so I wasn't going to go out on a loss. So I actually fought the guy who beat that guy. The guy who beat me went on, and he fought Robbie, and he lost. And then I got a chance to fight Robbie, who had beaten him, and I figured this was a good way of killing those demons.
Perfect. It also kind of sums up the common triangle you see in MMA, where this guy beats that guy, but he loses to that guy who beats him.
Yeah. Styles make fights.
Yeah. When you started coaching, were there any heroes that you kind of looked up to in the coaching realm that you kind of took this or that from? Or
a big influence on me was Carl Tanswell. He runs Straight Blast Gym in the UK, and I call him the mad scientist. He was always very deep down the road of sports science and what makes an athlete. So he was a big influence, because I came from an academic background. I'm an engineer, and I liked reading maths books and stuff like that. So I knew nothing about preparing an athlete. I liked the training, but I didn't understand proper nutrition and all of these things, and phasing your training and these ideas. And Carl was a great source of knowledge. I'm sure I bugged the hell out of him for the first couple of years. And then another mentor of mine was a very famous Irish athlete. His name is Kieran McGeaney. Back home, that's a name you have to whisper, and he can't walk down the street without being mobbed. Like he's a very big hero back home.
Boxer?
No, Irish footballer.
Ah.
And but whatever sport he would have done, he would have been a champion. That's without a doubt. And he went on to become and is a successful coach now in Irish football. He joined my gym and we just hit it off about 7 years ago. He's now a purple belt in jiu-jitsu and actually coaches some of my classes. But we're very close friends, and he's been another soundboard for me to throw things at, and he's been a great teacher of mine as well. And so yeah, I've had some good influence, and of course, number one is my coach Matt Thornton, who's given me the best advice I've ever gotten in coaching fighters. I can tell you now, actually, the single most important thing he ever told me was that never ask someone do they want to fight. Make sure they come to you and ask to fight. It sounds simple, but it's huge, and it's very tempting when you're a coach. If you see someone that looks really good in the gym and you go up to them and say, hey, you want to fight? You know, you look really good. It's already wrong, because their motivation now is to please you. It has to be about their own happiness, and it has to be about them motivating themselves. So I actually make it quite difficult for my guys to fight. They have to come to me first of all, and then I'll ignore them for the first while, and they have to really harass me. And now I know the relationship has started off the right way, that they're motivated to fight because of themselves, because they enjoy it. Not because I want to get some sort of reflected glory off one of them doing well. It's they want to do well, and then I'll be there to help. But the foundation is set right, and that was a great gift I got from Matt, and it stood me well.
So that's more proof of SBG being an honourable place to train, where you're not looking to milk them. You're looking to help them milk themselves. That sounds kind of weird out of context, but how's this part can be on or off the record, but I'm just wondering, as a follower and fan, how's the neck? How's things going with that?
Yeah, it's short answer, not good. I'm back being able to do a little bit of jiu-jitsu. I teach a teens class, and I can roll with the teens. They just don't have the power to kind of swing out my neck. But you know, I have a good friend, Professor Dan Healy. He's a neurologist, and he's seen my scans, and like, I'm not in pain now, which is great. I was in chronic pain for a while, but as he has said to me, the more I do jiu-jitsu, the more I risk that I could be in chronic pain for the rest of my life. So it's a balancing act between staying on the mat and rolling because I love it so much, and then being aware of the risk that I don't have many more times where I can make a mistake and recover from. I seem to have recovered from the last herniation, and when I say recover, it's still herniated, but it's not leaning on the nerve anymore, so I don't feel the pain. But I do have a pretty bust up neck on most levels. But it's most likely genetic rather than the sport, because my sister has a bad neck and she had to get an operation. My father's had a bad neck his whole life. So and I know some of the guys in my gym that are much more aggressive with their neck than I have ever been. I'm quite careful, but I might have just chosen the wrong sport.
Or maybe it's poetic. You chose the right one, because you slid right into coach, and this doesn't affect that very much, does it?
No, I'm still able to demonstrate the techniques, and I feel very lucky. I can be on the side of the mat, and I can still shout quite loud. That's not a problem. But yeah, my days of physically kind of battling with the guys in grappling and being able to shoot doubles and have people tear on my neck is over. But I can still pick my training partners who are sensible, and I can still get that, if you want to say, moment of zen where I can just be kind of rolling and forget about everything, and it's so enjoyable to me. So that's not gone yet.
Excellent. Hopefully may that stay long into your old age. And did you know that you're in some good company as far as, I don't want to say neck injury, but neck situation that could lead to injury, giving them the incentive to say, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore, in one Mr. Genki Sudo.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Are you aware of him?
Of course. I saw him at UFC 38 in Brawl in the Hall. He fought one of my old adversaries, Lee Ramidos. It was a good fight. But I didn't realize he had hurt his neck. Yeah,
he had when he was getting a scan, his doctor found it wasn't quite the same situation, but it was that he had a chip was just missing. He had a little something going on there, where the doctor said, like, okay, you're fine, none of your body is affected, and you don't feel it, obviously, but you're a way higher risk of breaking your neck than just about anybody. And Genki Sudo just said, "Oh, okay, well, I'm done with this. I'm gonna dance and make videos and do some, grappling and stuff, but not,
I might start dancing."
As an aside, just getting back to one thing, and this is like as close as I get to being a douchebag MMA fan, hopefully. But I just got to throw this in. As a hardcore Frank Mir fan, I just got to throw it out there that in that Ian Freeman fight, I don't know if you've watched it like in the last billion years, but there's a moment where Frank starts to grab a leg lock and falls back for the leg lock, and he's kind of looking at Ian Freeman's reaction and like kind of working, as some guys will do there. There's a bit of a pause there, and Freeman just up and horse kicks him right in the face, which, as you know, is illegal. And Big John McCarthy, who usually does a good job, but we've all had our moments, kind of just spazzes for a second, but then lets it keep going. Frank is rocked by the kick, and he loses the foot because of that kick. And Ian gets on, and within 20 seconds, fight's over. So, yeah, I'm not a direct member of Frank's family, so I don't have much excuse to be throwing this out there. But I just wanted to get your thought on that.
I don't remember, being honest. And I'll say as well, I'm a Frank Mir fan. I've always enjoyed his fights, and he was one of the first big guys that had smooth grappling. So I always enjoyed watching that. I don't remember, but if that did happen, I can tell you that things happen in fights all the time like that. And if that is the only reason you have for losing, it's not a great one. And I would imagine if you were to ask Frank, he would say probably the same thing. Look, these things happen. Sure. I remember someone was saying something to Chael Sonnen about like his shorts being grabbed or something, and he was like, "You know what? I've done worse than that." Because did someone grab his shorts, or I can't remember.
Yeah, Anderson grabbed his shorts in the second fight, which helped stop one of the takedowns.
Defense gets grabbed, and if a fighter has a career and he's got a lot of fights, there'll be incidents where it goes in his favor, and there'll be incidents where it goes against him. But you can't. I don't think a fighter would be happy with his loss being forgiven for an eye poke, something like that, where it's not that big a deal. And would he fought again and he didn't do that? Would it have been different? But I could tell you instances where that roll of the dice has gone against Ian in fights where he's been had the ref do things in him as well. So it's kind of just, it is what it is. It was still a great fight.
Indeed, and thanks for humoring. That was me being a little bit of a cunty fan. So, but I couldn't be in a conversation about that specific fight, which I've bitched about on the internet with fellow nerds, and then not bring it up when I'm talking to the great coach Don Kavanagh. Just a quick note on if you still have a few minutes.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Pressure. Just talk for a moment about that. It seems like a lot of guys struggle with pressure and either overcome it or fall under it. That seems to be kind of, in my opinion, like the majority is somewhere in that struggle. Then you have the outliers, which are like at the low end. You have like a Fedor Emelianenko, or in some ways Gunnar Nelson seems from the outside. Guys who just kind of, they look like they're going to get groceries, at the street when they're standing to touch gloves, and they look like they're thinking about whether or not they paid their phone bill that month, and it's just ice cold. Mm-hmm. So pressure seems to just slide right off of them. That's like I consider the low outliers, but then the high end outliers, which are maybe even more rare. I can't even think of that many, but I would say Conor McGregor is one of them, where he's not struggling with it, and it's not bouncing off him. He seems to actually feed off of it, to the point where, like, all the quote-unquote shit he talked about going into the Dustin Poirier fight about how he was going to smash him, which some fighters attempt to do. They don't usually do it as well as Conor, but they'll throw it out there. And then when it comes to actual fight, though, you'll see they'll be all business. They touch gloves and all that. Conor said everything he said, and then as he's walking up there, it's all on him, and he knows he's going to have to fight in about 30 seconds. He's still waving at him with the "come get some" and a smile on his face, like the same smile he'd have in an interview a month before. So it's like he's feeding off of it. It's like he's born to do that. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between how pressure affects professional competitors?
How best to put this? I think the guys who are most successful understand a very simple fact. And that is, regardless of the result, the people who matter to you will have the same opinion of you. So, let's say I'm talking to an amateur fighter. You know, the pros kind of have it wrapped up at this stage, but I'm talking to a newish amateur fighter, and he's going into a contest, and he's nervous. It usually comes down to that they don't want to look silly in front of their friends, or they don't want to look silly in front of their girlfriend. That's usually what a young guy is concerned about. And we're going right back to this, what we spoke about at the start, what I believe the prime purpose of combat sports to be. Now, they deal with that in different ways, but my way of talking to the fighter is, you rarely find that they're worried about pain. It's not usually that, oh, I don't want to get hit, or I don't want to get hurt in the fight. It's, I don't look silly. So my conversation with them is usually, well, let's imagine you lose. Will your girlfriend dump you? Or will your mother disown you? No. In fact, you're probably going to get even more love from them. Sympathy. But, of course, their opinion is not going to change. If, however, you had a friend, or if it was a girlfriend, or anyone, who didn't want to be with you after you lost, well, then you've learned something very valuable. That person wasn't a friend to begin with. So this small circle of people who matter in your life, if you win on Saturday night, they're still there on Sunday. If you lose on Saturday night, they're still there on Sunday. Nothing has changed. With the small circle of people. The circle of people on the outside of that, whether they love you or they hate you, you know, if they're fans, they're going to obviously blow you up on the internet and stuff like that the next day. If they dislike you, well, now is their time to give you a hard time on the internet. But it makes no real difference to your life. It's still going to be the same. On Sunday the sun will rise. You're going to have to get your ass out of bed. You're going to have to go to your job, or you're going to have to, whatever it is that you do, nothing will have changed. So that's usually the approach I try and take with them. Is like, not, the fear is not particularly real, because the small circle of friends, their opinion won't have changed one way or the other. And now to kind of speak more specifically about the names you mentioned, that's something that Gunny, you know, you mentioned Gunnar is really has under control. That he doesn't care about trying to please people that he doesn't care about. It's not his concern. He enjoys martial arts, and he enjoys competing. And then when he wins, he doesn't get all that excited. And when he lost, he didn't get all that excited. It just was. He went back to his missus and his kid, and now he's sending me pictures of him snowmobiling around Iceland, and that's just his day-to-day activity. He doesn't go online. He doesn't really care about some MMA fan 1, 2, 3 on the underground. Now we see what's really up a Gunner and exposed and all this kind of stuff. It's just not his concern. And in as much the same way as if he had lost or if he had won his last fight, MMA fan 1, 2, 3 was on saying, "Now are you all going to listen to me? I told you how great Gunner was." It's just not a concern of his, and I think that's what all the best fighters have. Conor specifically, he really enjoys it. He just enjoys the whole experience, you know. Maybe for Gunny, he doesn't really care about the opponent; it's just about himself and the experience of competing. But for Conor, he does. That's part of the fun of the physical side of competition, but the mental side of it as well. And you know, when the contest is over, it's become a slogan now. This, you know, remain humble in victory or defeat. You'll see it every time he wins. It's, you help the guy up and shake his hand and say, "Hey, that was fun. You know, let's do it again sometime." And in the gym, he'll be in the gym and trash talk his buddies. I've been rolling with him, and he's like, "Is that all you got?" I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about?" You know. And you'll see him boxing with guys in the gym, and we all are used to it now. But that's just fun for him. It's just, you know, it'll be a hard session and hard sparring and trash talking, and then when it's over, "Hey, it was great. How are you using your jab there? And which way were you doing that again?" And like, it's just all part of the game.
Right.
And it's playing and he loves it, and it's a very enjoyable experience for him.
The sense I get from the energy I get from watching Gunnar in the cage is like, I am very comfortable, and he's saying it to himself. And the energy I get from Conor in the cage is kind of him saying, "Look how comfortable I am, you nervous fuck," to the other guy.
I don't know if it's that. I genuinely see he gets to do this about 3 times a year, and it's only for a short number of years, and it's so much fun, you know. If he gets to do it another 10 or 20 times, whatever many fights he has left, it's so few compared to your whatever. What do we have now? Maybe 410
Life.
In life, maybe he'll be a granddad sometime looking back, and he'll have only had a few rare incidents over the space of hopefully a long life where he's got to do that and be on show and 20,000 people looking at him, and of course millions worldwide, and it's putting on a performance. And I kind of I put it on a similar. I said it in his documentary. It's sort of like an artist can be a couple of months behind the scene putting together a portfolio, or putting together a display, and then they go to a gallery and they put up their paintings. They want people to look at them. That's otherwise you're just going to be an artist and you paint your paintings and then you put it in a dark room. But that's not what you do. You put it on the wall and you hope on the night there's a bunch of people there looking at it going, "Wow, that's incredible." And you use the art as you're there looking at that and seeing their reaction to your work, and feeling that respect or praise, whatever way you want to put it. And it's a good feeling to be told. It's a good feeling to be told what you're doing is good, and to be recognised as being great at what you do. So, that's another side of competition that's he very much embraces.
Revels in it. Speaking of Gunnar, he's recently had that little setback, losing a decision to Rick Story, a close decision, I'd say. That was a few months ago now, though. Like, how is his return to the gym? How's he doing? How's his training going? What's his outlook these days?
Same as if he had have won. Same as always was. That night, we were watching TV and eating ice cream, and like his Avita won, it wouldn't have been much different. And now he's back in the gym, and he's just doing what he's doing. We've obviously discussed the fight, and I believe we've made some changes that we'll be seeing in the next one. Nothing huge. That's just the way the fight went that time. Story is a great opponent. He's got some great wins in his past, and he deserved that victory over Gunny, and that is what it is. And get ready for the next one.
Oh, just one last thing on Gunnar. How did an Icelander find his way to an Ireland gym in the first place?
It was actually his friend, I believe it was his friend Jan Verdat, invited Matt Thornton over. This is when it's quite a while ago. They invited Matt Thornton to Iceland, and so he was going over every year. Let me get this kind of wrong. But there was one year he couldn't go or something, and then Matt said, "Hey, do you want to go?" And so I was like, "Yeah, cool, Iceland. Never been to Iceland." And I went along, and I met. It was actually his friend Arnie Isaacson. He was the first Icelandic fighter that I coached. He moved to Ireland. But while I was there, they asked would I teach this private with this guy, some 16-year-old kid, and it's actually still on video, which is kind of cool. Oh, and I said, yeah, sure. So I taught a private to this 16-year-old, and Gunny always brings it up that I remember pinning him down. I was tickling him until he was like almost pissing himself. It was kind of funny because he was so serious at 16. And I just remember teaching him. He was always like kind of steely face, and I was like, dude, don't be afraid to smile. And it's before I knew him and knew kind of how he was. It takes you a while to kind of get used to Scandinavians sometimes. I think we're Europeans and Americans maybe a bit more expressive and a bit more open. Them it takes a while. To get through. So to loosen them up, I think I put him in like a twister hold and then just tickled him till he cried. Now, unfortunately, he can do that to me. But anyway, but that's kind of how it started.
Yeah, I just look at him as one of those rare, like a fish, Like, it's a different thing when you go down on the ground with him. He's just so much more comfortable than you are, and that's the you being high-level freaking opponents who have trained in jiu-jitsu for many years. Like, he just schools them down there. I actually had the pleasure of watching, by chance, that weird, I think it was an 8-man tournament he did kind of for fun, for some company or something. It was they streamed it live. Someone said, "Oh, here's the link," and I pulled over and watched it on my car on my phone, and I was just glued to it, both laughing and being like a martial arts fan, like in heaven watching this. Like, all these different guys, what they then revealed. I think they were all, if or almost all of them, training partners in some capacity.
Yeah, I mean, it's a small island, and Mjolnir's the biggest gym, so most of them are in there. But and most of them are like just ordinary guys. But there was one or two that were. I think there was one that was like 8 times national judo champion or something, and another one was like a strongman. But besides them, I've seen him do that to high-level black belts in the gym, and you can obviously see him do it in competition as well. But yeah, his grappling is on a different universe to the rest of us.
He's a hugely talented guy, and I'm as a fan, I'm just looking forward to what's coming next.
Skillful guy. I hate the word talent. So
what's that?
I hate the word talent. So he's
Why?
usually a skillful guy, because talent is like the word magic. It doesn't really say what it does. It's like looking at a chemical reaction and go, "Wow, that's magic." Well, it's not. There's a process behind it, and there's a process behind how Gunny got skillful. He didn't. I have video footage of him in his first lesson. He was shit. He was as bad as anybody else.
So he wasn't a natural on the ground.
Definitely not. No. But what he did do different than most people was he lost himself in it. And when he was going through those first early years of training, he was doing crazy amount of hours and crazy amount of rolling. And he got very good very fast. But he certainly was the same as anybody else at the beginning. He was a decent athlete because he played sports his whole life. He was a very good ice hockey player, so he had a good sense of balance and stuff like that. But in terms of on the ground, no, I used to kill him. It was very enjoyable. Now like I said, it's not so enjoyable anymore.
Wow, that's even more inspiring then, to know that he wasn't just down there flying. Do you think, we've obviously seen Conor become a sharpened sword as far as technique. He's a devastating striker. And if there is any magic, you could maybe say, you could describe his there's guys like him and Anderson and a very small group of guys, I'd say. They're not just high level technically. There's a little something extra going on in there when they compete. Maybe that's just the flash I'm feeling as a fan, but it's quite something to watch. Do you ever see, because I know he's such a nut nerd fan of a martial arts himself, do you ever see him, I'm sure he's quite adept on the ground at this point. Certainly we saw his top game against Max Holloway with one leg, that he was able to, pass guard and hold down a very high level guy in Holloway. But do you ever see a time when we're looking back on Conor's career and seeing a lot of, devastating submission victories, or is he going to always be kind of a Crow Cop, Vanderlei, or what, people who used it defensively to never get caught really, but just get up and start whooping ass on the feet?
It's just that his striking is so different than anybody. Most middleweights don't hit as hard as him. So it's just people just keep falling when he hits them. But it's of course not to say that his grappling is not a very high level, because he's like Gunny, he's interested in solving puzzles. So when he lost himself in grappling, it was very exciting for him to have a new puzzle to solve, because he's more or less, I think, worked out striking. So it was an interesting thing for him to do. And now the way he trains his body, I mean, he's incredibly flexible now. That's something that has changed in the last 6 months. So which lends itself to grappling even more. He's supple, flexible and strong. So he's even enjoying the wrestling and grappling aspect even more. So if it goes there, he's very comfortable, and he's got very strong submissions. But obviously the fight starts on the feet, and just so few people can deal with that. So he's obviously not going to. Why would you chase a new environment if in that particular moment you're winning? But of course in the gym, he starts in those positions, and he's always doing rounds with the likes of Gunnar Nelson and Cottle Pendra that are solid welterweights that are grapplers, and he'll go into grappling situations with them, and he does very well.
I'm excited to see it on the one hand. On the other hand, I'm not sure we'll ever get to if he keeps closing the show in 2 minutes with everybody.
Let's see.
Okay, just a few last ones now. These are quick questions, and then we'll finish up, and I'll get out of your face. Are there any? Who's your all-time MMA fighter fave as a fan, besides your own guys?
Besides my own guys,
and gals.
I'll say BJ Penn.
That's a big. That's like, if I had to guess, that would be the top answer. It seems like he's the fighter's fighter. Okay.
Yeah, you know, Fought Lyoto Machida. You know,
fuck.
It's crazy. You know, just anybody, anytime. Couple of belts at different weight classes. I got to meet him. He trained in Ireland with me. Really? Super nice guy as well.
When was that?
It was another one of these weird phone calls. I got a phone call on a Wednesday, I remember. You know, some guy saying, "Hey, I'm travelling through Dublin with BJ Penn. He wants to drop by and train. Are you around?" Yeah. And it was actually a funny one because I ran a small fight night, little small MMA show, and he happened to be there for that. And I was like, "Oh, do you want to, we're training Saturday, and then that night, do you want to come along and watch fights?" And he was like, "Yeah, cool." I was like, "Would you mind judging at it?" And he was like, "Yeah, no problem."
That's awesome.
At the same weekend, I had Chris Brennan there. And Chris Brennan was another judge that I asked, "Would you be there?"
Star-studded.
And then another guy, it was a Canadian, a black belt. This was within a time when BJJ black belts were not all that common. So I had a bunch of amateur fighters with BJ Penn, Chris Brennan, and then my friend Brian Bird judging them. That's pressure.
Pressure, but it's also like what an
honor. Of course, an honor.
That's a lottery win right there.
We hung out that night, and so he's a great guy. I'm very fond of him, but you cannot but admire that level of that warrior spirit. Like I said, he's from featherweight up to heavyweight almost. Like, he's crazy, and he's he's a short little guy, but and then sublime skills. Maybe the best jab in boxing and in MMA. I love how he uses his lead hand, and his grappling is just incredible as well. Goodney lived with him actually in Hawaii for a couple of months. Did a lot of training with him. Yeah.
In the early days.
Yeah. I think he was only 18 or something. He moved to Hawaii for, I think it was the summer, and they're pretty close as well. So
that's awesome. Any current MMA fighters in the game besides your own that you kind of have your eye on as a fan that always kind of tweak your interest in the current landscape?
I don't think fan be the right word, but definitely that I enjoy watching their fights, and I think they're solid technical fighters. I like looking at Rory McDonald, Chris Weidman, Anderson Silva, a couple of other names like that I enjoy watching to see what they're going to do now, and what's their latest kind of sequences and stuff like that. So I enjoy watching those guys.
I've heard, and actually I don't know if I quite agree with it, but I can sort of see something similarity between Conor McGregor and Nick Diaz. Do you see anything in that, or can you put your finger on that?
I can see why people, just because of maybe the trash talking and stuff, but I think technically a huge difference. Yeah. Huge difference. Diaz is not a power puncher. He doesn't. Well, I'm not going to start criticising. He's a fantastic fighter, but there'd be technical things I would see that are very, very different to Conor. But yeah, of course, the trash talk and stuff like that, I can see why people would.
Something about their way or their aura, something where they
maybe.
They get in.
I've never met him, so I don't know.
Ah, okay.
And it can be sometimes different meeting somebody and chatting to them as opposed to their social media persona or what's edited or what you're allowed to see of them.
Did you see at that big The Time Is Now conference when they asked Nick about Conor and vice versa?
I didn't know. No.
It was pretty funny. A fan or a reporter, I forget which, they asked Nick first, and we're like, "What do you think of Conor? What do you think?" And just classic Nick Diaz, he just picks up the microphone and says, "I like it." He puts the mic down. Then they cut to Conor, and they said, "Conor, how about you?" And Conor picked it up. He said, "I like it too." I said that was like two warriors kind of just nodding to each other.
Yeah.
What's your favorite submission?
Guillotine.
Me too. Any? Let me get nerd out a little bit. Any specific guillotine? Are we talking like regular guillotine?
Head and arm. That's
arm and guillotine.
Yeah, arm in. Yeah, that's, I believe, true finesse. If you can finish it, arm in guillotine.
Is that
the high elbow and these are nice to catch, but there's a different level of control with an arm in, and it's not as easy to finish. There's a few more nuances to it, but yeah, that's my favorite.
Is that because you see like the common, even in high level MMA, I'll see the common thing where the guy gets the head and arm guillotine, and he pulls it back? Does it drive you crazy when you see that? Like,
there be quite a few details that are missed. They don't drive me crazy. I'm kind of glad that I don't see that often, but I certainly enjoy. I also like it as well because it's like one of the first ones I learned: arm and guillotine and full close guard, and it's one of the very early submissions you learn. But as you go on, you become to see there's a lot more to it than initially was taught, and that's why I like the kind of Hicks and Gracie approach of, take the back, rear naked choke, and arm in guillotine. Chrome Gracie has a great arm in guillotine. So
Jake Shields.
Yeah. So I like when a simple technique is done at an expert level.
What's your favorite strike?
I don't believe I have one. Maybe
Come on, we got something.
I would answer honestly saying the one that lands. I'm probably more into footwork than the strike. I like seeing good footwork. I like when a fighter understands how to cut off the cage and understands how to close the distance with their feet correctly. Because if you close correctly and you make an angle correctly, well then the strike's kind of easy. Whatever you throw will land. Whereas you could, spinning kicks and all this kind of stuff you could talk about or look spectacular, but if the footwork is not right, it's not going to land, and you just end up looking silly. So I most enjoy watching footwork. A lot of times I'll watch old boxing fights. I just watch from the waist down just to see how they move and who made the angle. I guess it comes back to again seeing beauty and simplicity.
And maybe the higher mindedness of fighting. Like, it's not something you're ever going to see in a street fight. That's pure martial arts, right? Footwork.
Well, I whether it's in a street or in an octagon, or you're still going to have to put yourself in the right position to land a strike. So I still think it's kind of the foundation of if two men are standing. Well, it's whoever gets into the right position. It's almost like a war, trying to get the high ground, or trying to flank your opponent or whatever. So, yeah, that I would have to say in the striking game, it's the footwork that interests me most. Any
guys that jump out at you that are like high level right now doing exemplifying
I
it?
think Conor leaves everybody in the dust with footwork. That's who I've enjoyed watching the most.
I'd have to agree, actually. Him and Machida. I like watching Machida.
Machida, I came from a karate background. I did karate for 10 years, so I actually teach. I probably teach karate footwork more than Western boxing footwork, because of the kicks. It's a slightly different range than boxing, but and Goodey's obviously a very high level karate fighter as well. So yeah, and Conor has a beautiful blend of both.
I also noticed Vitor Belfort's career kind of resurgence the last few years. A lot of casuals just kind of point to what he's putting in his body, but not sure personally how much that stuff is going to beat a high-level martial artist. What he did do was start training karate footwork with Machida about 5 years ago, and I noticed that he knows how to get in there real fast now on people.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing.
Cheers. What's your favorite self-defense move?
Favorite self-defense move? Buying the other guy a drink. It's got me out of a lot of trouble.
I was going to say running, but you got me beat.
Sometimes you can't run. Actually, I'll tell you a quick funny story. I was on holidays and I was in a bar with girl I was with at the time, and a couple of guys started. I knew it was going to happen. It was going to be a fight. I can't remember exactly how it happened. And I said to the guy, "I'll do you a deal. If you can beat me in thumb wrestling, I'll fight you. But if you lose, you owe me a beer." And I guess he didn't really know how to respond to it, but he did have a thumb wrestle with me. Now, he didn't know that I'm pretty much unbeatable in thumb wrestling. I've got some serious technique in thumb wrestling. So I beat him. And as friends, it kind of became funny then. And then I said, "But I'll also buy you a drink." And then I bought him a beer, and we actually ended up hanging out. So, yeah, that's my self-defense movie.
That's pretty badass. That's movie quality stuff right there. All right, I'll go out on this one. Speaking of movies, I know you've been watching 24 with one Special Agent Jack Bauer. What's your favorite 24 moment so far?
Damn it! Running out of time! Anytime he says that.
So pretty much your favorite moment happens 5 times per episode, every episode.
Yeah, Jack Bauer's... I'll tell you another funny thing. In Iceland, there's actually a phrase, and it sounds like you're saying kefir, and it means, let's say someone's trying to be cool. You would say it's, I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but it's something like Rolex kefir. But they've actually changed it now to be Rolex, as in a Rolex watch, and Kiefer, as in Kiefer Sutherland. So it's kind of like someone trying to be Jack Bauer, and it's just a nice. I'll have to ask Gunny to explain it better, but because I was, when I was on holidays, I was outside a Rolex shop, and I just sent Gunny a photo of it saying Rolex Kiefer, because it's, like I said, it's a phrase used in Iceland, and it came about because of 24, and then you see a dude trying to be cool on a skateboard or something, like Rolex Kiefer. So it's kind of a phrase I got from that.
That's awesome. Well, I learned only one phrase that I stuck in my head, actually, when I went to Iceland for the 3 weeks I was there. And that is "Ég klosetik."
Sounds pretty good, I have to say.
Yeah, and it means "I am the toilet bitch."
Okay, I never heard of it.
It went over well when meeting new people, because they always said that it was the perfect pronunciation, and then the phrase.
If I close my eyes, you do sound Icelandic.
But in the MMA, media world, which I don't consider myself a part of, I'm a fan just doing something, here, and you helped me out a lot by doing this. But in that world, I guess I am the toilet bitch. But I'm king for a day in it here right now, so I want to.
King every day. What do you think that matters?
And also, I know you're aware that you were the proud recipient of the 2014 Petey Award for Best Coach.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Much appreciated.
And but yeah, you've more than reciprocated the honor. So I just wanted to say thank you very, very much for this, allowing me this interview.
No problem. My pleasure.
And cheers.
All right, brother.
I don't suppose you'd be down for a thumb wrestling match.
I'll have a thumb wrestling.
All right. Let's close out the show. What are we doing? 3 pins or 1 pin?
Oh, just one.
Just one. All right.
1, 2, 3, 4. I declare Tom war.
Is that? You got to do 1, 2, 3. Come on.
Oh God! Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. I declare Tom war.
For the record, I'm in a cheap rematch right now. All right, I lost. I had to let go. So once you let go, you're out. Cheers, John Kavanagh.
You're very welcome. Don't give away my technique now.
Well, I'm not going to say.
It's got me.